In a small, quiet town nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, life moved at a slow, predictable pace. The streets were lined with modest homes, and the air carried the faint scent of freshly cut grass. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other by name, and strangers stood out like sore thumbs. Among the residents were two brothers, Marcus and Michael Johnson, who lived together in a cozy house on the edge of town. They were identical twins, tall, broad-shouldered, and unmistakably alike, save for a small scar above Marcus's left eyebrow that he had earned during his teenage years. Their dark skin seemed to glow under the sunlight, and their piercing brown eyes always held a sense of calm determination. To most people in the town, Marcus and Michael appeared to be ordinary men leading simple lives. Marcus worked as a personal trainer at the local gym, where he helped clients transform their bodies and build strength. His cheerful demeanor and motivational speeches made him popular among the members. Michael, on the other hand, spent his days fixing cars at a nearby auto repair shop. He had an uncanny ability to diagnose problems with engines just by listening to the sound they made. People often joked that Michael could fix anything with wheels, no matter how old or broken it was. Despite their different professions, the brothers shared a close bond. They spent their evenings cooking dinner together, watching sports, or taking long walks through the neighborhood. But there was something about Marcus and Michael that no one in the town knew. Beneath their unassuming exteriors lay a past filled with extraordinary achievements and harrowing experiences. Both brothers had once been part of the Navy SEALs, one of the most elite military units in the world. Over the course of their careers, they had completed missions in some of the most dangerous corners of the globe, facing unimaginable challenges and risking their lives countless times. Together, they had earned more medals than anyone in their unit, a testament to their bravery, skill, and unwavering commitment to protecting others. However, after years of service, they decided to leave the military behind and start anew. They chose this sleepy little town because it offered them the peace and anonymity they craved. Here, they could live without the constant pressure and scrutiny that came with being decorated heroes. Despite their decision to step away from the limelight, Marcus and Michael never forgot the lessons they had learned during their time in the Navy. Discipline, teamwork, and resilience were ingrained in every fiber of their being. These qualities weren't just tools for survival, they were ways of life. Whether it was helping a struggling client at the gym or repairing a car that seemed beyond saving, the brothers approached every task with focus and precision. Even in mundane situations, they carried themselves with a quiet confidence that hinted at their hidden capabilities, yet they never flaunted their accomplishments. To their neighbors, they were simply hard-working, friendly guys who kept to themselves. One sunny afternoon, as Marcus and Michael strolled back from the grocery store, their bags filled with fresh produce and snacks, they noticed a group of young men gathered near the park. There were about 6 of them, all dressed in matching black jackets emblazoned with insignias that suggested gang affiliation. They lounged on benches, smoked cigarettes, and laughed loudly, their voices carrying across the otherwise peaceful street. Something about their presence felt off, like a dark cloud hovering over the town. As the brothers walked closer, they couldn't help but feel the weight of hostile stares directed their way. The gang members glared at them with narrowed eyes, their expressions dripping with disdain. At first, Marcus and Michael tried to ignore the tension. They continued walking, keeping their heads high and maintaining a steady pace. But then, one of the gang members leaned forward and muttered something under his breath. Though his words were barely audible, the tone was unmistakable. It was laced with hatred and prejudice. "Look at these two," he sneered, loud enough for the brothers to hear. "Don't know why they think they can strut around here like they own the place." Another member chuckled, adding fuel to the fire. A racial slur followed, cutting through the air like a knife. Marcus stopped in his tracks, his jaw tightening as he processed the insult. Beside him, Michael exhaled sharply, his grip tightening around the grocery bag. For a moment, the world seemed to freeze. The brothers exchanged a glance, silently communicating their thoughts. They had faced far worse threats in their lifetime, but this situation was different. This wasn't a battlefield. It was their home, the place where they had sought refuge from the chaos of their former lives. Still, they refused to let bigotry go unanswered. Instead of reacting impulsively, they chose to walk away, knowing that engaging at this point would only escalate things unnecessarily. As they turned the corner and disappeared from sight, the gang members' laughter echoed behind them, mocking and cruel. Back at their house, Marcus and Michael unpacked the groceries in silence. Each was lost in thought, replaying the encounter in their minds. They had dealt with racism before, both in uniform and out of it, but this felt personal. It wasn't just about them, it was about the community they had grown to love. If such hostility festered unchecked, it could poison the entire town. Marcus broke the silence first, his voice steady but tinged with frustration. "We can't let this slide," he said, placing a carton of milk into the fridge. Michael nodded, leaning against the counter. "Agreed," he replied. "But we handle it our way, not theirs." That night, as they sat on the porch watching the stars twinkle above, the brothers reflected on their journey. From the battlefields of foreign lands to the quiet streets of this small town, they had always fought for justice and equality. Now, it seemed, they might have to fight again, not with weapons, but with courage and conviction. Little did they know the confrontation they had narrowly avoided earlier that day was only the beginning of a much larger challenge. And when the time came, they would face it head-on, proving once again that true strength lies not in aggression, but in standing up for what is right, even when the odds are stacked against you. The days that followed the encounter at the park were far from peaceful for Marcus and Michael. The gang members, emboldened by their initial display of hostility, began to make their presence felt more frequently. At first it was subtle, a car slowly driving past the gym where Marcus worked, its occupants glaring through tinted windows. Then came the graffiti sprayed on the wall outside Michael's auto repair shop. Crude symbols and racial slurs meant to intimidate. Each act was a reminder that the brothers weren't welcome in what they had come to consider their home. Despite the growing tension, Marcus and Michael refused to let fear dictate their lives. They continued their routines as if nothing had changed. Marcus greeted every client at the gym with his usual enthusiasm, pushing them to reach new personal bests. Michael whistled while he worked under the hood of a car, his hands moving with practiced precision. Yet beneath their calm exteriors, both men remained vigilant. They had trained themselves over years of service to read people and situations quickly, and they knew this wasn't just random harassment. It was calculated provocation. One evening, as Michael locked up his workshop, he noticed a figure lingering across the street. It was one of the gang members leaning against a lamppost with arms crossed. When Michael caught his gaze, the man smirked and made a mocking gesture before walking away. That night, as the brothers sat down for dinner, Michael recounted the incident. "They're testing us," he said, stabbing a fork into his mashed potatoes. Marcus nodded grimly, his mind already piecing together strategies. "If we ignore them completely, they'll see it as weakness," Marcus replied. "But if we confront them too soon, we risk making things worse." The next morning, the twins decided to take proactive steps. They started carrying their phones everywhere, ensuring they could call for help if needed. They also informed a few trusted neighbors about the escalating situation, asking them to keep an eye out for anything suspicious. While Marcus reached out to the local police department to report the vandalism at Michael's shop, Michael installed additional security cameras around their property. These measures weren't just for their safety, they were a statement. The brothers wanted whoever was targeting them to know that they wouldn't be easy targets, but the gang didn't back down. If anything, their actions grew bolder. One afternoon, as Marcus jogged along the trail near the park, he found his path blocked by 3 gang members. They stood shoulder to shoulder, their jackets zipped up tightly, their faces twisted into sneers. "You lost?" one of them asked, stepping forward. His voice dripped with mockery. Marcus slowed to a stop, his breathing steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. He recognized the leader, the same man who had hurled insults at him and Michael days earlier. "Just out for a run," Marcus replied evenly, keeping his tone neutral. "No need to get worked up." The leader chuckled darkly, motioning for his companions to close in. "Maybe you should find somewhere else to run," he said, taking another step closer. "This neighborhood doesn't belong to people like you." Marcus clenched his fists but forced himself to stay calm. He scanned the area quickly, noting potential escape routes and calculating distances. His training kicked in automatically, sharpening his focus. Years of combat experience had taught him how to remain composed under pressure, and now, those lessons were more valuable than ever. Still, he held his ground, refusing to give the gang the satisfaction of seeing him rattle. Meanwhile, Michael faced his own share of trouble. A group of gang members showed up at the auto repair shop late one afternoon, pretending to be customers. They demanded absurdly low prices for services, and then accused Michael of overcharging when he politely declined. When he explained that parts and labor cost money, they erupted into loud accusations, calling him names and slamming their fists on the counter. Michael didn't flinch. With practiced patience, he calmly told them to leave, adding that he wouldn't tolerate any threats or disrespect. Though they eventually stormed off, their parting words promised retaliation. As the harassment intensified, so did the emotional toll on the brothers. For all their physical strength and mental resilience, they couldn't escape the weight of constant scrutiny. Every trip outside their home felt like stepping onto uncertain ground. Neighbors whispered behind closed doors, speculating whether Marcus and Michael would retaliate or simply endure the abuse. Some offered support, bringing casseroles or leaving encouraging notes on their doorstep. Others kept their distance, fearing they might become collateral damage in whatever conflict was brewing. Yet, amid the chaos, Marcus and Michael found solace in each other's company. They spent their evenings strategizing, sharing stories from their time in the Navy SEALs and reminding themselves why they had chosen this quiet life. "We've faced tougher challenges than this," Marcus said one night as they sat on the porch, sipping coffee. "Remember that mission in the desert? We survived without water for 2 days," Michael chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Yeah, but at least back then we had guns and backup. This is different." Despite the humor in his voice, there was no mistaking the seriousness of their predicament. Their resolve hardened with each passing day. They agreed that they wouldn't stoop to the gang's level no matter how much they were provoked. Violence wasn't the answer, not yet anyway, but neither would they allow themselves to be pushed around. Instead, they focused on gathering evidence. Every insult, every threat, every act of vandalism was documented meticulously. They sent photos and videos to the police, hoping the authorities would intervene before the situation spiraled further out of control. In the meantime, they prepared themselves mentally and physically, knowing that a confrontation might be inevitable. It came sooner than expected. One Friday evening, as the brothers walked home from the grocery store, they were ambushed near the alleyway behind the park. The gang had been lying in wait, hiding in the shadows until the perfect moment to strike. As Marcus and Michael turned the corner, 6 figures emerged, blocking their path. The leader stepped forward, his lips curling into a cruel smile. "Thought you could ignore us forever?" he taunted, cracking his knuckles. "Guess it's time to teach you a lesson." For a brief moment, time seemed to stand still. The air was thick with anticipation, the kind that precedes a storm. Marcus and Michael exchanged a glance, their expressions unreadable. There was no fear in their eyes, only determination. They had faced death countless times in the past, and they weren't about to let a group of bullies break them now. Without a word, they dropped their grocery bags and assumed defensive stances, ready to defend not just themselves, but the values they had always fought for: dignity, respect, and justice. What happened next would change the town forever. The alleyway behind the park was dimly lit, the orange glow of a flickering street lamp casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. The gang members formed a loose semicircle around Marcus and Michael, their smirks betraying a mix of arrogance and malice. The leader stood at the forefront, his chest puffed out as if daring the twins to make a move. "You think you're tough?" he sneered, his voice dripping with venom. "Let's see how tough you really are." His words hung in the air like a challenge, heavy and loaded with intent. Marcus and Michael didn't respond immediately. They stood shoulder to shoulder, their bodies relaxed but alert. Years of Navy SEAL training had taught them the importance of staying calm under pressure, and they drew on that experience now. Their breathing was steady, their eyes scanning the scene for any advantage or threat they could exploit. Though outnumbered, they weren't intimidated. In fact, there was a quiet confidence in their posture, an unspoken assurance that they were more than capable of handling whatever came their way. The leader, growing impatient, decided to act first. With a guttural shout, he lunged at Marcus, his fist aimed squarely at the twins' face. It was a reckless, poorly executed attack, the kind born of anger rather than skill. Marcus saw it coming from a mile away. In one fluid motion, he sidestepped the punch, grabbed the man's wrist, and twisted his arm behind his back. The gang leader let out a sharp cry of pain as Marcus applied just enough pressure to immobilize him without causing serious harm. "Stay down," Marcus said firmly, his voice devoid of emotion. But the leader, stubborn and enraged, struggled against the hold, only worsening his predicament. Seeing their leader in trouble, two other gang members rushed toward Marcus, hoping to overwhelm him with sheer numbers. Marcus pivoted smoothly, using the leader as a human shield to block their advance. When one of the attackers swung wildly at him, Marcus ducked beneath the blow and delivered a precise kick to the man's knee. There was a sickening crunch followed by a yelp of agony as the attacker crumpled to the ground, clutching his leg. The second assailant hesitated for a fraction of a second, just long enough for Marcus to seize the opportunity. He closed the distance between them in an instant, delivering a swift elbow strike to the man's solar plexus. The gang member doubled over, gasping for air before collapsing onto the pavement. Meanwhile, Michael was dealing with his own set of opponents. 3 gang members had surrounded him, their movements erratic and uncoordinated. One of them charged forward, attempting to tackle Michael to the ground. Michael simply stepped aside, letting the momentum carry his attacker past him. As the man stumbled, Michael reached out and grabbed the back of his jacket, yanking him backward with surprising ease. The gang member landed hard on his back, the wind knocked out of him. Before he could recover, Michael planted a firm foot on his chest, pinning him down. "Don't get up," Michael warned, his tone calm but commanding. The remaining 2 attackers exchanged nervous glances, clearly shaken by how quickly their companions had been neutralized. Still, pride, or perhaps desperation, kept them from backing down. They circled Michael cautiously, looking for an opening. One of them feinted left, trying to distract Michael while the other moved in from the right. It was a clumsy attempt at teamwork, and Michael saw through it instantly. As the first attacker lunged, Michael sidestepped and grabbed him by the collar, using his own momentum to throw him into the second attacker. Both men collided with a dull thud, falling in a tangled heap on the ground. By now, the entire fight had lasted less than 2 minutes. The gang members who were still conscious scrambled to their feet, their bravado replaced by panic. The leader, finally freed from Marcus's grip, staggered backward, clutching his injured arm. You freaks," he stammered, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and disbelief. "What the hell are you?" Marcus fixed him with a cold stare. "We're just people trying to live our lives," he replied evenly. "But we won't tolerate being treated like garbage." Realizing they were no match for the twins, the gang members began retreating, limping and stumbling as they fled into the darkness. Within moments, the alleyway was empty, save for Marcus and Michael standing amidst the aftermath of the confrontation. Grocery bags lay scattered on the ground, their contents spilling onto the pavement. A faint breeze rustled through the nearby trees, carrying with it the faint scent of damp earth. For a moment, neither brother spoke. They simply stood there, catching their breath and taking stock of what had just happened. Finally, Michael broke the silence. "Well," he said, brushing dust off his hands, "that could have gone worse." Marcus chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Yeah, but this isn't over," he replied. "They'll be back, and next time, they might bring reinforcements." Michael nodded, his expression turning serious. "Then we'll deal with it when it happens. Until then, we stay ready." As they began gathering their groceries, the reality of the situation settled over them. This wasn't just about defending themselves. It was about sending a message. The gang had underestimated them, assuming that because of their race the twins would cower or retreat. Instead, Marcus and Michael had proven that they were not to be trifled with. Their actions weren't driven by anger or vengeance but by a desire to protect their community and their dignity from hatred and ignorance. Later that night, as they sat in their living room nursing minor bruises and sipping cups of tea, the brothers reflected on the events of the evening. They knew word of the fight would spread quickly. Small towns like theirs thrived on gossip, and it wouldn't take long for everyone to hear about what had happened in the alleyway. Part of them worried about the attention it would bring. After all, they had chosen this life to escape the spotlight, not to become the center of controversy. But another part of them felt a sense of relief. Maybe, just maybe, standing up to the gang would inspire others to do the same, to reject racism and intolerance in all its forms. Unbeknownst to Marcus and Michael, their actions had already begun to ripple through the town. Neighbors who had witnessed parts of the altercation whispered among themselves, their admiration for the twins growing with each retelling of the story. Some even ventured outside to check on the brothers, offering words of support and gratitude. One elderly woman, Mrs. Harper, approached their doorstep the following morning with a basket of homemade muffins. "Thank you," she said earnestly, her eyes glistening with tears. "You stood up for all of us." But while some residents rallied behind the brothers, others remained cautious. Rumors swirled about the gang planning retaliation, and a few shopkeepers expressed concern that the conflict might drive customers away. The local police department, meanwhile, launched an investigation into the incident, questioning witnesses and reviewing security footage from nearby businesses. Officers arrived at Marcus and Michael's house later that day, asking for their account of what had transpired. The brothers recounted the events truthfully, emphasizing that they had acted purely in self-defense. As the officers listened intently, one of them, a young detective named Sarah Collins, couldn't help but notice something unusual about the twins. Despite the violence they had endured, they carried themselves with remarkable composure. Their movements were deliberate, their answers concise and measured. Detective Collins found herself wondering if there was more to these men than met the eye. "Have either of you had any formal training?" she asked casually, jotting notes in her pad. Marcus and Michael exchanged a glance, silently debating how much to reveal. After a brief pause, Michael leaned forward slightly. "Let's just say we know how to handle ourselves," he said cryptically. Detective Collins raised an eyebrow, but didn't press further. She sensed that the twins were holding back, but she also respected their privacy. Whatever secrets they harbored, she suspected they had good reasons for keeping them hidden. That night, as the brothers prepared for bed, they couldn't shake the feeling that their lives were about to change again. The confrontation with the gang had forced them to confront a side of themselves they had tried so hard to leave behind. Yet, deep down, they knew they couldn't turn away from the responsibility that came with their abilities. Whether they liked it or not, they were leaders, protectors of those who couldn't defend themselves. And as long as hatred existed in the world, they would continue to stand against it, no matter the cost. The days following the alleyway confrontation brought a strange mix of tension and curiosity to the small town. News of the fight spread like wildfire, with each retelling adding new layers of drama and speculation. Some versions claimed the twins had single-handedly taken down an entire gang armed with knives. Others suggested they possessed superhuman strength. While these exaggerated tales amused Marcus and Michael, they also made them uneasy. They had always valued their privacy, but now it seemed impossible to escape the spotlight. Strangers began stopping them on the street to thank them or ask questions, and even longtime neighbors looked at them differently, as if seeing them for the first time. Detective Sarah Collins returned to the brothers' house a few days later, this time accompanied by her partner, Detective Mark Harris. The two officers carried notepads and cameras, ready to document every detail of the ongoing investigation. "We've been reviewing the security footage from nearby businesses," Collins explained as she sat across from Marcus and Michael in their living room. "It's clear you acted in self-defense, but we need to make sure our report is thorough." She paused, glancing at Harris before continuing. There's just one thing we're still trying to understand. How did you manage to take down 6 men so quickly? Marcus and Michael exchanged a knowing look. This was the question they had anticipated, but hoped to avoid. For years they had kept their past hidden, blending into the fabric of ordinary life. Revealing their history as Navy SEALs felt like opening a door they had worked hard to close. But something about Detective Collins's earnest demeanor and the gravity of the situation made them reconsider. If the truth could help put an end to the gang's harassment, perhaps it was worth sharing. Michael cleared his throat, leaning forward slightly. You're right, he began, choosing his words carefully. We weren't exactly unprepared for what happened that night. He hesitated, glancing at Marcus for reassurance. When his brother gave a subtle nod, he continued. Both of us served in the Navy SEALs. We spent years training for situations like that. Not because we wanted to fight, but because we believed in protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. The room fell silent. Detective Harris raised his eyebrows, clearly stunned, while Collins stared at the twins with newfound respect. Navy SEALs? She repeated, her voice tinged with disbelief. That explains, well, everything. She glanced at Harris, who nodded slowly, scribbling notes furiously. Why didn't you mention this earlier? Collins asked, though her tone wasn't accusatory. It was more curious than anything else. It's not something we advertise, Marcus replied calmly. When we left the military, we wanted to start fresh. We came here because it seemed like a place where we could live without judgment or expectations. We didn't want our past defining us. Collins nodded thoughtfully, absorbing his words. I can understand that, she said. But given the circumstances, it might actually work in your favor. If word gets out that you're former SEALs, it could deter the gang from coming after you, or anyone else in town, again. Her suggestion hung in the air, heavy with implication. Marcus and Michael exchanged another glance. They knew Collins was right, but the idea of exposing their identities filled them with conflicting emotions. On one hand, it could bring peace to the community and send a strong message against racism and violence. On the other hand, it meant stepping back into a role they had tried so hard to leave behind. After a moment of deliberation, Michael spoke up. If revealing who we are helps keep this town safe, then we'll do it, he said firmly. But we don't want special treatment. We're just regular people doing what we think is right. Detective Collins smiled faintly, impressed by their humility. Fair enough, she said. Let us handle the details. In the meantime, stay vigilant. These gangs tend to retaliate when they feel humiliated, and I wouldn't put it past them to try something reckless. As the detectives left, Marcus and Michael sat in silence, processing the weight of their decision. They had spent years building walls around their past, shielding themselves from the pressures of fame and recognition. Now those walls were crumbling, brick by brick, leaving them exposed. Yet deep down, they knew they couldn't turn away from the responsibility that came with their skills and experiences. Whether they liked it or not, they were leaders, protectors, and the town needed them now more than ever. Over the next few days, news of the twins' military background began to circulate throughout the community. At first, it was whispered, among close-knit groups of friends and neighbors. Then local newspapers picked up the story, running headlines like, Decorated Heroes Defend Town Against Gang Violence, and Navy SEAL Twins Stand Up to Racism. Within a week, the entire town and beyond knew the truth about Marcus and Michael Johnson. The reaction was overwhelming. Neighbors who had once treated them as ordinary citizens now greeted them with awe and admiration. Children pointed at them excitedly in the streets, calling them real-life superheroes. Business owners offered discounts at their shops, insisting the twins accept the gestures as tokens of gratitude. Even the mayor held a press conference praising the brothers for their bravery and urging residents to unite against racism and intolerance. Despite the outpouring of support, Marcus and Michael remained grounded. They declined interviews with major news outlets, refusing to let their story become sensationalized. Instead, They focused on helping the community heal. Together, they organized a town hall meeting to address concerns about gang activity and brainstorm ways to foster unity. Dozens of residents attended, filling the local library with hopeful faces eager to contribute to positive change. During the meeting, Marcus stood at the front of the room, his presence commanding yet comforting. "We didn't fight those gang members to gain attention," he began, his voice steady and sincere. "We did it because no one should have to live in fear of being targeted for who they are. Our goal isn't to inspire fear. It's to inspire courage. Courage to stand up for what's right even when it's hard." Michael took over from there, explaining their vision for the future. "We want to start a self-defense program for kids," he said. "Not just to teach them how to protect themselves physically, but to show them the importance of discipline, teamwork, and standing up against injustice. If we can empower the next generation, we can create a safer, stronger community." The crowd erupted into applause, moved by the brothers' humility and determination. By the end of the meeting, volunteers had signed up to assist with the program, and donations poured in to cover equipment and resources. For the first time in weeks, the town felt alive with hope, rather than fear. Meanwhile, the gang responsible for the harassment found themselves increasingly isolated. Their leader, nursing both physical injuries and wounded pride, struggled to maintain control over his followers. Many members had grown disillusioned, realizing they were vastly outmatched by the twins. Those who remained loyal were too afraid to act, knowing full well what awaited them if they crossed paths with Marcus and Michael again. One evening, as the brothers walked through the park where the harassment had begun, they noticed a familiar figure sitting alone on a bench. It was the gang leader, his head bowed and his shoulders slumped. Despite everything, Marcus and Michael approached him cautiously, stopping a few feet away. "We're not here to hurt you," Marcus said softly, breaking the silence. The man looked up startled, his eyes red-rimmed and hollow. "Then why are you here?" he muttered bitterly. "To talk," Michael replied. "What you did was wrong, but that doesn't mean you're beyond redemption. You have a choice, to keep feeding hate or to find a better path." For a long moment, the leader said nothing, his gaze fixed on the ground. Finally, he nodded, almost imperceptibly. "Maybe you're right," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But it's not going to be easy." "No one said it would be," Marcus said, extending a hand. "But we'll help however we can." As the three men shook hands, a sense of closure washed over the park. It wasn't a perfect resolution, there was still work to be done, but it was a step toward healing. And for Marcus and Michael, that was enough. They had faced countless battles in their lives, but none as meaningful as this one. Because in the end, true heroism wasn't about defeating enemies. It was about inspiring others to rise above hatred and build a brighter future together. The days following the meeting in the park marked a turning point, not only for Marcus and Michael but also for the entire town. The gang leader, whose name was revealed to be Jake, began attending the self-defense classes organized by the twins. At first, his presence caused murmurs of unease among the participants, many of whom recognized him as the instigator of the harassment campaign. But Marcus and Michael insisted on giving him a chance, believing that true change required forgiveness and understanding. Jake's transformation wasn't immediate or easy. He often arrived late to the sessions, his posture slouched and his expression guarded. When asked to participate in drills, he hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with being in close proximity to people he had once tried to intimidate. Yet, Marcus and Michael remained patient, guiding him through each exercise with calm encouragement. "It's not about strength," Michael told him during one session. "It's about control, over your actions, your emotions, and your choices." Slowly but surely, Jake began to open up. One evening after class ended, he lingered behind while others left. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, his voice tinged with frustration and confusion. "You could have turned me over to the cops, or worse. Why help someone like me?" Marcus leaned against a nearby wall, crossing his arms thoughtfully. "Because we've all made mistakes," he replied evenly. What matters is whether we learn from them. You chose hate before, but now you have an opportunity to choose something different, to make amends and build trust. Jake stared at the ground, his jaw tightening as if wrestling with conflicting thoughts. Finally, he nodded. I don't deserve a second chance, he admitted quietly. But I want to try. For my little brother. His voice cracked slightly at the mention of family, revealing a vulnerability beneath his tough exterior. From that day forward, Jake became more committed to the program. He started arriving early, helping set up equipment and volunteering to demonstrate techniques. Though his progress was slow, his efforts didn't go unnoticed. The kids in the class, initially wary of him, began warming up to his presence. They laughed when he stumbled during practice and cheered when he improved. Over time, Jake stopped, seeing himself as an outsider, and started feeling like part of the community, a role he hadn't realized he craved until now. As the weeks passed, the town continued to heal. The self-defense program gained traction, attracting participants of all ages. Parents enrolled their children, hoping to teach them discipline and resilience. Teenagers joined to boost their confidence and physical fitness. Even adults signed up, eager to learn skills that could protect themselves and their loved ones. The twins approached every session with the same dedication they had shown during their Navy SEAL training, emphasizing not just technique, but values, like teamwork, respect, and perseverance. One Saturday morning, as Marcus led a group of teenagers through a series of defensive maneuvers, Michael noticed a familiar face in the crowd. It was Mrs. Harper, the elderly woman who had brought them muffins after the alleyway incident. She stood near the sidelines, clutching a cane and watching intently. When Michael walked over to greet her, she smiled warmly. I came to see what all the fuss is about, she said, her eyes twinkling mischievously. And maybe pick up a few tips for myself. Michael chuckled, pulling up a chair for her to sit. Well, if you're serious, we'd be happy to teach you some basics, he offered. To his surprise, she accepted enthusiastically, insisting she wanted to feel safer walking home at night. From then on, Mrs. Harper became a regular attendee, earning the nickname Grandma Guardian among the younger participants. Her determination inspired everyone around her, proving that courage knows no age limit. Despite the progress, challenges remained. Rumors surfaced that remnants of the disbanded gang were regrouping under new leadership, seeking revenge against Marcus and Michael. Late-night phone calls filled with threats disrupted the brothers' peace, and suspicious cars were spotted, idling outside their house. Determined not to let fear dictate their lives, they doubled down on security measures, installing motion-activated floodlights and reinforcing locks on doors and windows. They also reached out to Detective Collins, who promised to keep an eye on any suspicious activity. One evening, as the brothers sat on their porch discussing these developments, a neighbor approached them. It was Mr. Peterson, a retired schoolteacher, who lived 2 houses down. I couldn't help overhearing, he said, adjusting his glasses nervously. If you need anything, extra eyes, support, whatever, you've got it. This whole street has your back. Marcus and Michael exchanged a glance, touched by the gesture. Thank you, Mr. Peterson, Marcus replied sincerely. That means a lot. We'll let you know if we need help. As the older man shuffled back to his house, Michael shook his head in amazement. Never thought I'd say this, but I think we've created something special here, he mused. A real sense of community. Their bond with the town grew stronger with each passing day. Marcus and Michael became fixtures at local events, lending a hand wherever needed. Whether it was coaching little league teams, organizing food, drives, or volunteering at the senior center, they immersed themselves fully in community life. Their humility and kindness endeared them to everyone they met, breaking down barriers and fostering connections across generations and backgrounds. Even those who had initially been skeptical of the twins' intentions warmed up to them. A group of teenagers who used to mock Marcus at the gym now sought his advice on workout routines. Shopkeepers who had once eyed Michael warily invited him to join their book club. Slowly but surely, the twins transformed from outsiders into pillars of the community, not because of their past achievements, but because of the way they carried themselves, with grace, integrity, and unwavering compassion. One crisp autumn afternoon, the town held its annual Harvest Festival, a celebration of unity and gratitude. Booths lined the main street, offering homemade pies, crafts, and games for children. Music drifted through the air as families strolled together, laughing and chatting. At the center of it all stood Marcus and Michael, overseeing a booth dedicated to raising awareness about anti-bullying initiatives. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, the mayor took the stage to deliver closing remarks. "This year has been challenging for all of us," she began, her voice carrying warmth and sincerity. "But thanks to the courage and leadership of two remarkable individuals, we've come together stronger than ever." She gestured toward Marcus and Michael, who stood modestly off to the side. "To Marcus and Michael Johnson, our heroes, our friends, we owe you more than words can express. Thank you for reminding us what it means to stand united." The crowd erupted into applause, cheering and whistling as the brothers stepped forward to accept the recognition. Marcus raised a hand to quiet the noise, his expression humble yet resolute. "We didn't do this alone," he said, his voice steady and heartfelt. "Every single person here played a part in making this town a better place. So instead of thanking us, thank yourselves for choosing kindness over hate, for standing up for what's right, and for believing in the power of community." Tears welled up in several eyes as the audience erupted into another round of applause. Children ran up to hug the twins, while adults patted them on the back or shook their hands. Amid the chaos, Jake appeared, holding a tray of cookies he had baked earlier that day. "For you," he said shyly, offering it to Michael. "Thanks for everything." Michael grinned, accepting the gift. "You did good, Jake," he said, clapping him on the shoulder. "Keep going." As the festival drew to a close, Marcus and Michael stood side by side, watching fireworks light up the night sky. Despite everything they had endured, the battles fought, the sacrifices made, they felt a profound sense of fulfillment. They had set out to live ordinary lives, free from the pressures of their past. But in embracing their roles as protectors and mentors, they had discovered a deeper purpose: to inspire others to rise above hatred and build a world rooted in love and understanding. And so, under the glow of exploding stars and surrounded by the laughter of their neighbors, the twins knew they had finally found their true home, not just in the town itself, but in the hearts of the people who called it home alongside them. The weeks that followed the Harvest Festival brought a renewed sense of peace to the town, but Marcus and Michael knew better than to let their guard down completely. The remnants of the disbanded gang still lingered in the shadows, their whispers carried by the wind and their intentions murky at best. Despite this lingering threat, the twins focused on nurturing the positive changes they had sparked within the community. Their self-defense program continued to thrive, drawing participants from neighboring towns who heard about its impact. What began as a small initiative had grown into something much larger, a movement centered on empowerment, unity, and resilience. One chilly November morning, as frost clung to the grass and leaves crunched underfoot, Marcus and Michael arrived, early at the community center to prepare for the day's session. Inside, they found Jake already there, arranging mats and setting up equipment with quiet determination. Over time, he had become an integral part of the program, not just as a participant but as a mentor to younger members. His transformation was nothing short of remarkable. The once angry gang leader now radiated patience and humility, qualities that earned him respect even from those who had once feared him. As the class began, Marcus gathered everyone into a circle. "Today," he said, his voice firm yet warm, "we're going to focus on teamwork. Fighting isn't always about winning, it's about protecting each other." He paired participants together, assigning them exercises designed to foster trust and communication. Watching the kids laugh and encourage one another filled Marcus with pride. These weren't just lessons in self-defense. They were building blocks for a brighter future. Meanwhile, Michael worked with a group of teenagers practicing advanced techniques. Among them was Sarah Collins's teenage son, Ethan, who had joined the program after hearing stories of the twins' heroism. Initially hesitant, Ethan quickly discovered a passion for martial arts, channeling his energy into discipline and focus. As Michael demonstrated a complex move, Ethan mimicked it perfectly, earning cheers from his peers. "You've got potential," Michael told him afterward, ruffling his hair playfully. "Keep pushing yourself." Despite the progress, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Late one night, Marcus noticed headlights sweeping past their house again. This time, however, the car didn't drive away. It parked several houses down, its engine idling ominously. Grabbing flashlights and baseball bats, a precautionary measure they kept handy, the brothers stepped outside to investigate. Before they could approach, Detective Collins pulled up in her patrol car, lights flashing silently. She rolled down her window, her expression grim. "We've been tracking these guys," she explained. "They're planning something big, probably targeting tonight's charity event downtown." Marcus and Michael exchanged a glance, their minds racing. The charity event was meant to raise funds for local schools, and dozens of families would be attending. "We can't let anything happen," Michael said firmly. "Tell us what we need to do." Collins hesitated, weighing her options. Finally, she nodded. "I'll call for backup, but I need you two to stay alert. If things go south, your skills might make all the difference." The charity event unfolded under twinkling string lights strung between trees in the town square. Booths selling handmade crafts and baked goods lined the area, while children played games and parents mingled over hot cocoa. Marcus and Michael moved through the crowd inconspicuously, scanning for signs of trouble. They spotted Jake near the entrance, keeping watch alongside Mr. Peterson and a few other neighbors. It was heartening to see so many people stepping up to protect their community. Just as the mayor took the stage to deliver a speech, a commotion erupted near the edge of the square. A group of masked individuals emerged from the shadows, shouting threats and brandishing makeshift weapons. Panic rippled through the crowd as parents ushered their children toward safety. But before the attackers could cause harm, Marcus and Michael sprang into action. With practiced precision, Marcus intercepted the leader, disarming him swiftly and pinning him to the ground. Nearby, Michael tackled another assailant, using his momentum to send him sprawling onto the pavement. Within moments, the rest of the gang scattered, overwhelmed by the unexpected resistance. Detective Collins and her team arrived shortly after, apprehending the culprits and securing the scene. As the dust settled, the townspeople gathered around the twins, their faces etched with gratitude and admiration. "You saved us again," Mrs. Harper said tearfully, clutching Michael's arm. "How can we ever repay you?" Marcus smiled softly, shaking his head. "You don't owe us anything," he replied. "This is our home too, and we'll always stand by you." In the days that followed, the town rallied around the twins once more. Local newspapers hailed them as heroes, though Marcus and Michael insisted the real credit belonged to the community. "It wasn't just us," Michael emphasized during a brief interview. "Everyone stepped up, from Jake to Mr. Peterson to the parents shielding their kids. That's what makes this place special." Jake, meanwhile, faced a crossroads. With the remaining gang members arrested, he no longer felt tied to his old life. Inspired by the twins' example, he decided to pursue a career in social work, hoping to guide others away from the path he had once walked. "You showed me there's another way," he told Marcus and Michael one evening. "Now it's my turn to pay it forward." By December, the town sparkled with holiday cheer. Lights adorned every street lamp and wreaths hung on doors throughout the neighborhood. For the first time in years, Marcus and Michael decorated their own home, hanging stockings above the fireplace and placing a small tree in the corner of their living room. On Christmas Eve, they hosted an open house, inviting neighbors to share food, stories, and laughter. It was a celebration not just of the season, but of the bonds they had forged together. As midnight approached, Marcus stood on the porch, gazing at the snow-covered landscape. Michael joined him, handing over a steaming mug of cocoa. "Think we made the right choice?" Marcus asked quietly, referring to their decision to reveal their past and embrace their roles as leaders. Michael sipped his drink thoughtfully before replying, "People will always remember what we did here. Not because we're Navy SEALs, but because we chose to care. That's what matters." Marcus nodded, feeling a warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with the cocoa. For all the challenges they had faced, they had found something far greater, a sense of belonging, purpose, and love. In protecting their town, they had also found themselves, and that, they realized, was the greatest victory of all.